Starting my business Recloseted absolutely changed my life, and I am so grateful for it. But looking back now as a more seasoned founder, there's definitely things I would do differently. In this video, I'm going to overview all my learnings and all my mistakes over the past 6 years so that you can learn from them. I can prevent you from making the same costly mistakes, and we can really guarantee and fast track your success. So let's dive in. If you're thinking about starting a business, my biggest piece of advice for you is to look at the total addressable market or the size of the opportunity. You've likely heard this before, but I just wanted to re-emphasize this because it's so important. Building a business, especially if it's your first time building a business, it's hard enough. And so you don't want the market to act against you. If you're starting a business in a declining market, like if you were starting an agency for newspapers and newspapers are going out of business, that's going to be such an uphill battle from day one. So you don't want to do that. You want to make sure it's a growing market, but also you want to make sure the market is big enough for you to be able to hit the type of income you want to try to make. With Recloseted, I talked about in my career pivot video that I did realize that it was niche, but a bit too niche. Yes, the market was growing and yes, the market was big, but honestly, it wasn't big enough for the type of goals that I was trying to reach. The total addressable market size and the total opportunity size is something really to be mindful of as you're trying to figure out what type of business you want to make. So again, you want to make sure the market's not declining. You want to make sure it's growing, but also you want to make sure the size of the market is big enough that you can achieve everything you want to achieve there. Make sure you pick a good market because, like I mentioned, building a business is hard. So you don't want the market acting against you, because that's like taking a sailboat out, having the wind work against you while you're trying to build this boat and it's already so hard. So definitely think about the market. The next is to nail your product. If you don't have a good product or you don't have a good service you're selling, you do not have a business. You really want to make sure you nail the product market fit. You want to understand your USP or your unique selling point, what makes you different, because there's so many products and services out in the market today. And at the end of the day, I talk about this all the time with my clients and I talked about it all the time on the Recloseted YouTube channel, but you got to take a customer first approach. You need to fully understand the persona and the target that you're trying to help. You need to understand what they're struggling with, what their pain points are, what their challenges are, and how your product or how your service is able to help them with that. If you don't have a good product that gets people results, that transforms people, then why are you putting that out there? Because like I said, there's so many products out there already. I know it might sound harsh, but you do really need to understand what your unique selling point is because there are so many products out there. You can't just do something someone else is doing and just mark it down, because if you're playing a price game and that's the only differentiating thing you have, that is going to be a race to the bottom and you will not have a profitable business. You need to have a differentiating factor that is not just price. You need to make sure it's high quality, it solves a problem and all this stuff. And so after really thinking through the market, the next really important thing is product. So really making sure you validate your product. I think a rookie mistake people make is they fall in love with a product idea they want to do. So they're like, oh, I want to start an agenda company. I want to start a planner business or whatever it is. And then you start to sketch out what the planner could look like, what the pages could look like. But honestly, if you take a step back and you start to ask some of the people you want to buy your planners or support your business, you might realize that maybe they're burnt out or maybe their current systems aren't working for them. You can start to approach it from a lens of curiosity and trying to figure out their problems. And then you try to solve those problems they have and turn it into a product versus starting with a product and then try to fit a customer profile into it. It's just not going to work as well. So really get curious and figure out what the product's going to be, validate it, make sure that people actually want it, will use it, and are so excited about it, and then go and put it out. Like I keep saying, aftermarket product is the second thing that is so important, because without a product that can stand on its own, without a unique product, you do not have a business. Building upon my last point, I think it's so important not only to have a product that solves a problem, has that product market fit, and you validated it, but it needs to be such a good product. It needs to be high quality, it needs to be timeless, it needs to be beautiful, all these things, because there is so much competition out there nowadays. So you want to make sure it's good. As someone that's worked in the climate and sustainability space for over half a decade and is really passionate about that work, I will say that brands that lead with sustainability don't have as much success as brands that have really good products that also happen to be more conscious or more sustainable. I think we cannot lead with being sustainable anymore because it is slowly becoming table stakes, which is a good thing. We want everyone to think a little bit more consciously and factor in what that looks like for their products and their business. But that cannot be your unique selling point because other people can also be more conscious. And I think that's great, actually, like I mentioned, that other people are. Instead, you need to have a really great product that solves a problem, solves a pain point, like I said, but it's also high quality. People love using it. People really get a lot of joy out of it. It's timeless, it's beautiful, all this stuff. And then your customers find out that it's sustainable after the fact, and it's a nice cherry on top. So you really need to have a validated product that's amazing, that's timeless, super high quality, like I keep yapping on about. And then sustainability comes on as a cherry on top. I don't think you can lead with that anymore because it is becoming table stakes, which is a good thing. That's what we want. Then the bar for the table stakes of sustainability just keep raising, which is great. When it comes to your marketing and your branding, I really think that you need to take a community first approach. It's easy for me to sit here and say that, but it is such a big deal nowadays because there's so many brands on social media. But if you can truly build an engaged community of customers that are so loyal to you, so into what you're doing, and your die-hard supporters, that is when you're going to build a successful business. The golden heyday of influencer marketing, I really feel like it's starting to dwindle because consumers are starting to get sick of seeing influencers on brand trips, getting free stuff left, right, and center. It's really lost the type of novelty it used to have because it has become quite saturated. Instead, if you can host community events or customer events, that is so important. And I think a brand that does a really good job of this is Array. The founder, Sif, she's talked about this on different podcasts before too, but she invests in influencers and content creators, but she also invests back into her customers. A lot of brands will host beautiful dinners or lunches to launch a new product to influencers, but influencers are attending so many of these, and so the novelty really has worn off. Yes, the community might be excited to see that you've launched a new product or whatever it is, but this is one of the lunches or one of the dinners or one of the trips that the influencer is going on, and they're going on a bunch. Like I said, that novelty has really worn off and it's become more saturated. It still costs brands a lot of money to host these events and to host these trips. Instead of just blowing it on influencers, why don't you save some of that budget and invest it back into your top customers? These are people that are actually paying for your products with their hard-earned dollars after tax too, might I add. So making sure you also invest back into your customers and foster a community. Like I mentioned, Sif from Array talks about how she does that. And so I don't want to take credit for it, but I think what she's doing is so smart because it is important to invest back into your customers and your community and think about community first marketing and branding and how you can do things at the beginning that do not scale. I think that's key. You need to send people handwritten notes. You need to DM every single follower that follows you and thank them and try to connect with them because if you do that at the beginning, that's how you can continue to foster that connection, get close and stay close with your customer so that you can continuously grow. My word of advice, do things that won't scale and really focus on your community. That is going to really help you. The next thing I would really focus on is meaningful collaborations and partnerships. I have invested in my fair share of meta ads, so Facebook ads, Instagram ads. Half a decade ago, I think ads were so much better in terms of an ROI, but nowadays with a lot of the tracking not being as great and all this stuff, the ROI of ads has started to decrease and it's not as good anymore. And so instead, I think it's a better use of your time and your budget to do more collaborations and partnerships. And I wish I did this earlier and I wish I did more of this when I was starting Recloseted because I did it towards the end as we got bigger and as I got the podcast, but it has helped my business so much. I've been invited on to different podcasts. I've flown all over the world for speaking engagements, and it's because we've partnered with like-minded businesses that were in our industry and our ideal customer would be in those communities as well. Don't underestimate the power of collaboration and of partnering with another business that targets the same person you're targeting because you can go further together. And I really don't think that you should put your blinders on and look at everyone as competition. I really do think you can go further faster with collaborators and with everyone helping each other. My next thing I would do differently is twofold. So the first is I wish I would have invested in courses, programs, mentors sooner. I really didn't get over this limiting belief / this scarcity mindset until maybe my second year in business where I finally bit the bullet and I invested in something I really should have invested in a long time ago. And it was able to help me solve my problem like that. I was able to accelerate my progress and all this stuff. Sometimes it does take time to get used to the idea of investing in yourself and investing in your business to be able to fast track your success and guarantee what you're trying to do. I would have done that sooner because I've seen the impact it's made on me as a founder and as an entrepreneur, but also the impact I had on my business. The other thing I would do too is to also do my due diligence before I invested in things. Because while I have invested in courses and programs and mentors that are great, I have also invested in other things that have not been great. Back on my Recloseted Radio podcast, I was very candid about the time I made a $10,000 mistake. Yes, 10 grand. You heard that correctly. I'm happy to talk about it on this platform too, because it was wild. I felt like shit because that's 10 G's, but also I learned a very valuable lesson. And basically what happened was I paid 10 grand for this PR agency to give me PR and all this stuff ahead of one of my launches. And they just kept messing up. It was red flag after red flag after red flag. And I just kept letting it go until it just couldn't keep going on anymore. And the straw that broke the camel's back is that they pitched me to be on my own Recloseted Radio podcast, which is wild. Like, didn't do any research. And in the pitch email, my name was spelled wrong. There were so many things that were being misrepresented in that pitch email. And like I mentioned, they pitched me to be on my own goddamn podcast. And so after that, I fired them. But it was wild. Like I mentioned, you do want to invest, but you want to do your due diligence. And some quick tips here is just looking at what they're promising, what's on the sales page, what's on the contract, what are you going to be getting out of this? You also want to look at other people they've worked with before. So just see, do you like the results they've gotten, whether it's a PR agency or whether it's a designer that you're hiring or whether it's a coach that you're hiring, whatever it is, just look through it and do your due diligence. Sometimes when people refer other people, just keep in mind that some people get referral kickbacks. So it is unfortunate that sometimes people will refer people without even doing due diligence just because they want that referral 10% or whatever it is. Just know that sometimes people do that and it is kind of shitty, but it happens. So anyways, all this to say, I don't want this to scare you from investing because like I said, it really has helped me as an entrepreneur and as a business owner. And there's things I've invested in that have been amazing and I wholeheartedly would recommend them. But on the flip side, there's things I've invested in that I was kind of like this was definitely overpromised and underdelivered. So all this to say, would continue to invest, and I wish I would invest earlier, but also at the same time, wish I did my due diligence a little bit more as well. The next thing I would have done differently, looking back, is to be all over my numbers. I talk about this all the time, but you need to know how much money you're making, aka your revenue. You need to know how much you're spending, aka your expenses, and you need to know how much is left over, aka your profit. It wasn't until I started using QuickBooks, which is the accounting software that most people use worldwide, but QuickBooks has these reports that auto spit out your P&L, your profit and loss statements, your cash balances, all this stuff. And I would go in there at least once a week to look at what was going on, if not daily. From that, I started doing forecasts and just trying to see if I was on track or off track. Because before, I did not do that because, quite frankly, there was just so much going on and I was running around like a chicken with its head cut off. I just left the numbers to my accountant and then I would just go in and input some of my expenses at the end of the month. And I would really avoid it. It does do you such a disservice because if you don't know what's going on in your business, what happens is you subconsciously think about it and then you don't know and then you kind of get anxious about it and then it's just a vicious cycle. So it's really important you know what's going on. And then that way, if changes do need to happen or pivots do need to happen, you at least are in a position where you have all the data and you can make sound judgment decisions. Be all over your numbers. I cannot stress that enough. Even if you aren't someone that is super comfortable with numbers, it is really important and quite easy to understand the basic concepts like how much money I'm bringing in, how much I'm spending, and how much you have left over. If you find that how much you have left over is not what you need it to be, then you either need to make more or you need to spend less. But you would not have this data and you would not have this knowledge if you didn't look. So you do need to look on a regular basis. Don't shy away from it. Take it from me. The next thing I wish I did sooner was to set myself up for success and set my mental sanity and my mental health up for success as well. Over the past half decade that I was running my business, I came up with so many systems, processes, and templates to help make my life easier. But I honestly wish I had all of that from the get-go because I burnt out so much. The first year, I was burning out consistently every single month. It was so bad. And it was because I was doing everything and a lot of the stuff I was doing wasn't important. Also didn't know how to prioritize, and everything just felt like it was on fire all the time. I was just constantly in this fight or flight mode. It was just so bad for my nervous system. Well, I'm feeling anxious just thinking about it. Building up systems, tools, and processes from the get-go to set yourself up for success are so important. I can definitely do further videos on that if you're interested, but it is really important to understand your working style, what you actually need to be working on to move the needle in your business, and just how to set yourself up for success, because it's just so important. Because if you're burnt out as a founder, you can't work on your business and you can't move it forward. So it is really important you are set up for success. Another thing I wish I did was to hire help earlier as well. Sometimes you can feel like you don't need to hire people because you don't want to give up control and no one can do this as well as you can. And this is your baby and no one else is allowed to touch it. There's all these different narratives you have, especially as a first-time founder, but you definitely need to think of your time as being super valuable. And in fact, something that I did that was really helpful was to put an hourly rate on my time. So let's just say that your hourly rate is $300 an hour. Well, if your hourly rate is $300 an hour and you're spending 5 hours a week packaging orders where you could have paid maybe someone $20 an hour to do it, is it worth your time, especially as you get bigger and as you scale? I think it's really important to hire help when needed. And you also don't have to hire a full-time person right off the get-go. That's a common misconception I see. You can hire a contractor and you can have them part-time. They can work 1 day a week, 2 days a week, and then you can ramp them up that way so you don't have the pressure of trying to pay for someone's salary right at the get-go. Do hire help if you need it. The next thing I also wish I did was to implement quarterly review meetings. We used to do this at my 9-to-5 job because it was a really big corporation, and for big corporate jobs, they have all these different things in place. And a lot of the times I found it annoying because there was so much red tape in big organizations, as you likely know if you work in one. I just got so allergic to it. So when I started my business, I was like, we're not going to do that stuff. We're not going to do that stuff that wastes time and wastes resources and gets everyone off doing what they actually need to be doing. While in the early days, it was just me, and I did not really have the time to have like a formal quarterly review process and put together slides for it when it was literally just me. I do think it's important to have a quarterly check-in. You don't necessarily need to put together a slide deck if it's just yourself, but at least have it on your notes app or in a Google Doc or in a Notion template around what's going well, what's not going well, what are some lessons, did you hit your targets, what are the goals for next quarter. You really need to think through that. It's important to have the discipline to do that, even if it's just yourself, so that you can hold yourself accountable, you can see your progress, you can learn from things. And if you watched my career pivot video, I talked about the fact that I wish I implemented what Annie Duke likes to call in her quit book, kill switches. And I would definitely at these quarterly review meetings look through your kill switches and what's going on. Do you need to pull the plug on something? Do you need to pivot something? If I had those quarterly review meetings, I would have been able to pivot and accept the pivot way earlier. It is really important on a bare minimum to look at this quarterly, but ideally you can think through things monthly and look at just how things are trending on a weekly basis as well. Are you hitting your targets? Are you not for the month? It's really important, like I said, to look at your numbers and know what's going on. Those are 10 things that I would definitely do differently. And I hope that you can learn from my mistakes and implement all of these items if you're thinking of starting a business. If there's anything else you want me to cover, or if you have any questions, leave them down below. I am all ears. But in the meantime, I am so excited to be able to support you. I know a lot of you have been DMing me at Selena J. Ho on Instagram, so keep the DMs coming. I love chatting with you. And until next time, let's build sustainable businesses that are good for the planet, good for your lifestyle, but also for your bank account as well.